Welcome, dear listener. I'm glad you're here. This is your moment to slow down, to gently leave the day behind, and to settle into rest. You don't need to stay fully awake, and you don't need to follow every word. Just allow my voice to be with you, soft, steady, and unhurried. Take a slow breath in, and as you breathe out, let your shoulders relax, your body grow heavier, and your thoughts begin to quiet. Nothing is required of you now. There is nowhere else you need to be. In a moment, I'll begin a calm fairy tale meant to be listened to easily, like distant waves or a warm light in the dark. If your mind wanders, that's perfectly fine. If sleep comes, welcome it. The story will continue whether you are listening or dreaming. Make yourself comfortable now, and when you're ready, the story will begin. The Weaver of Forgotten Songs. In a village where the sea met the sky in whispers of silver and blue, there lived a woman named Isara, who wove cloth that remembered music. Her cottage stood at the edge of the cliffs, close enough to hear the waves but far enough to remain dry when storms rolled in from the horizon. Inside, her loom was never silent. The wooden shuttle moved back and forth with a rhythm that matched her heartbeat, creating fabrics that shimmered with colors no dye merchant could explain. The peculiar thing about Isara's cloth was this: when someone wrapped themselves in it, they would hear music, not loudly, and not from any instrument they could name, but soft and clear as memory itself. A scarf might hum a lullaby a grandmother once sang. A blanket might whisper the wedding dance from a couple's happiest day. A shawl could carry the melody of morning birdsong from a childhood garden long since grown wild. The villagers bought her weavings when they needed comfort, which was often enough to keep Isara's cupboards full and her lamp oil plentiful. But they never asked how she did it, and she never told them. Some gifts are meant to remain mysterious, she believed, like the way certain shells still echo with ocean sound, or how some stars seem to sing on winter nights. What Isara didn't weave into her cloth were her own memories, for those were silent. She had no music of her own to remember. No mother's lullaby, no lover's serenade, no songs from festival nights or quiet afternoons. She'd been found as an infant on the beach after a terrible storm, wrapped in seaweed and sleeping peacefully while the waves retreated. The fisher who discovered her said she hadn't been crying, just watching the sky with dark, patient eyes, as if waiting for someone to notice her there among the driftwood and foam. The village had raised her collectively, passing her from household to household like a treasured but slightly mysterious heirloom. She'd been loved in her way, but never quite belonged. And somehow, in all those years of borrowed homes and temporary hearths, no one had sung to her. They'd fed her and clothed her and taught her to read and cipher, but music had simply never been part of her particular story. So Isara wove other people's songs into cloth and felt no bitterness about her own silence. Mostly. Everything changed on the night of the autumn equinox, when the stars seemed to hang lower than usual, and the sea turned the color of pewter beneath a swollen moon. Isara was working late, as she often did, finishing a commission for a widow who wanted to remember her husband's voice. The loom sang its mechanical song, and Isara's hands moved with practiced certainty, threading silver-gray wool with strands of cornflower blue, the colors of the man's favorite shirt, the widow had said. She was so focused on her work that she didn't hear the knocking at first. When she finally noticed and opened the door, She found a stranger on her threshold unlike anyone she'd ever seen. He was tall and thin, dressed in clothes that seemed woven from mist and moonlight. His hair, the silver white of birch bark. But it was his eyes that arrested her. They were the deep blue-green of the ocean's heart, and they held a sadness so profound it made Isara's breath catch. "I need your help," he said, his voice like whined through ship's rigging. "They told me in the village that you weave memory into cloth. I need you to weave something for me, something that can hold what I'm afraid to forget." Isara stepped aside to let him enter. She'd learned long ago not to turn away those who came seeking her particular craft, especially not when they arrived with such sorrow in their eyes. The stranger moved through her cottage with a peculiar grace, as if he wasn't quite used to the solidity of floors and walls. He paused before her loom, reaching out to touch the half-finished cloth with fingers that trembled slightly. "This is beautiful work," he said softly. "I can almost hear the song already, threaded into the warp and weft. You have a rare gift. What is it you need me to weave?" Isara asked, bringing him tea in a clay cup that steamed with bergamot and honey. The stranger sat, though he seemed uncomfortable with the simple wooden chair, as if he expected it to dissolve beneath him. "I am a keeper of songs," he said. "Or I was, before I lost them. My name is Caius, and I come from the place where all music goes when it's forgotten the realm between the last note and silence, where melodies wait to be remembered." Isara felt something shift in her chest, a recognition she couldn't quite name. "I didn't know such a place existed. Most don't. It's not somewhere you can travel by ship or road. You reach it by listening so deeply that you hear what's no longer being played, by remembering so carefully that you resurrect what was meant to be lost." Caius set down his untouched tea. "I've been a keeper there for longer than I can recall, collecting fragments of forgotten songs, children's rhymes from dead languages, love ballads from vanished kingdoms, battle hymns from wars no one won. I preserved them, kept them safe, so they wouldn't disappear entirely from the world." "What happened?" Isara asked gently. Caius's expression crumpled with grief. "I fell in love with a mortal woman, a singer in a seaside village much like this one. Her voice could make stones weep and flowers bloom out of season. We had one perfect year together, one year where I would come to her at twilight and leave at dawn, bringing her songs from my collection, teaching her melodies that hadn't been heard in centuries." He paused, and Isara waited, understanding that some stories needed silence to unfold properly. "She died." Caius continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "Fever took her in the spring, so suddenly I didn't even get to say farewell. And when she died, I broke. I screamed, and the sound of my grief shattered every song I'd ever kept. All those precious, fragile melodies gone, scattered like birds from a burning tree." "I'm so sorry," Isara said, and meant it with her whole heart. "I've been wandering ever since, trying to gather the pieces. Some songs I've managed to find again, humming in unexpected places, a child's skipping game, an old man's work tune, a mother nursing her baby. But most are lost, truly lost, and I." He looked at her with those ocean-deep eyes. "I'm forgetting her. Forgetting her voice, her laugh, the exact way she moved when she sang. I need you to weave those memories into cloth before they slip away entirely." I need something I can hold that will remember for me. Isara's hands were already reaching for her wool, her fingers itching to begin, but she hesitated. I weave what people remember, she said carefully. I've never tried to capture something someone's actively losing. And I don't know if my gift is strong enough to hold a love like yours. Caius stood and crossed to her, taking her hands in his own. His touch was cool, like river stones, but gentle. You were found in a storm, wrapped in sea foam, weren't you? Born from the place where water meets air, where solid becomes liquid, where one thing transforms into another. You're a threshold, Isara. That's why you can weave memory, because you exist between what is and what was. If anyone can help me, it's you. The certainty in his voice awakened something in Isara, a sense of purpose she'd never quite felt before. I'll try, she said, but you'll need to tell me about her. Everything, every detail, every moment, every song. I'll need to know her almost as well as you did to have any hope of capturing her essence. And so Caius began to speak. He told Isara about Marisol, who had hair like midnight and skin like honey, whose fingers were calloused from guitar strings and whose laugh could fill a room with warmth. He described the way she would close her eyes when she sang, as if looking inward at the music. He recounted their first meeting, when he'd heard her voice from across the boundary between worlds, and been so entranced he'd crossed over without permission, risking everything just to see who could make such achingly beautiful sound. He spoke of their stolen year walks along the beach at sunset, nights spent in her small room above the tavern where she performed, mornings when she would wake and sing to the rising sun. He remembered aloud the songs he'd taught her, a planting hymn from a civilization that had crumbled 3,000 years ago, a morning chant from a people who'd been absorbed into other cultures and forgotten, a celebration dance from an island that had sunk beneath the waves. And as Caius spoke, Isara worked. She chose wool the color of midnight for Marisol's hair, threads of gold for her laughter, deep brown for her eyes. She wove in silver for the starlight they'd walked beneath, and blue for the sea they'd loved. Her hands moved faster than they ever had before, the shuttle flying back and forth as if possessed, the loom singing its rhythm in harmony with Caius's memories. Hours passed. The moon crossed the sky and began its descent. Caius's voice grew hoarse, but he didn't stop, pouring out every treasured detail before it could evaporate like morning dew. And Isara didn't stop either, her fingers aching, her eyes burning, but her focus absolute. As dawn approached, Isara made the final pass of the shuttle and cut the cloth from the loom. It shimmered in the candlelight. A shawl of midnight blue shot through with gold and silver, brown and bronze. And when she lifted it, they both heard it faint but unmistakable, a woman's voice, singing a melody that seemed to contain all the joy and sorrow of existence. Caius's face transformed. He reached for the shawl with shaking hands, and when he wrapped it around his shoulders, tears began streaming down his face. That's her, he breathed. That's exactly her voice. How did you? But Isara was staring at her hands, stunned, because for the first time in her life, she could hear music that was her own. When she'd woven Marisol's voice into the cloth, something had shifted inside her. The barrier that had kept her from her own songs had cracked, and now she could hear them faint but growing stronger, melodies that had been waiting inside her all along. I think, she said slowly, we helped each other. By weaving her memory, I found my own music. By trusting me with your grief, you gave me a gift without knowing it. Caius smiled through his tears. Then we're even, though I'll never be able to thank you enough for this. He reached into his pocket and drew out something small and luminous, a pearl, but unlike any Isara had ever seen. It glowed with inner light, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. This is a song pearl, Caius explained. When a melody becomes so beautiful, so perfect that it takes physical form, it becomes one of these. I've only found 3 in all my time as a keeper. I want you to have it. Listen to it when you weave, and it will help you capture even the most delicate memories. Isara accepted the pearl with reverence. It was warm in her palm, and she could hear it humming softly, a tune that seemed to shift and change with her breathing. There's something else, Caius said. The songs I lost when Marisol died, they're still out there, scattered across the world. I've found some, but I can't search everywhere at once. Would you help me? When you weave, if you hear fragments of forgotten songs, would you gather them for me? We could restore what was lost, together. Isara felt her heart expand with possibility. I'd like that. I'd like that very much. As the sun rose over the cliff's edge, Caius prepared to leave. But before he went, he taught Isara one of the songs he'd recovered, a simple, haunting melody that had once been sung by lighthouse keepers to guide ships safely home. Isara sang it back to him, and her voice, unused for so long to carrying music, was rough but true. Caius smiled, and for the first time since entering her cottage, the sadness in his eyes was balanced by hope. I'll return, he promised. When the moon is full again, I'll come back to see what songs you've found, and perhaps by then, you'll have discovered a few of your own as well. After he left, Isara stood in her doorway and watched the sunrise paint the sea in shades of rose and amber. She could hear music everywhere now, in the waves, in the wind, in the cry of gulls, and the creak of her cottage settling on its foundations. The world was full of songs, and she was finally able to hear them. She returned to her loom with new purpose. The widow's commission was finished, but there were other pieces to weave, other memories to capture. And now, threaded through each one, would be fragments of forgotten songs, recovered melodies that Caius could reclaim, restored bit by bit through the work of her hands and the gift of her newly awakened music. In the weeks that followed, Isara's weavings became even more renowned. People came from distant villages to commission cloth that would hold their dearest memories, and each piece Isara created was richer and more vibrant than the last. She would weave late into the night, the song pearl resting on her workbench, filling the cottage with its gentle, ever-changing melody. And sometimes, in the midst of her work, she would hear it, a fragment of something ancient and beautiful, a scrap of song that didn't belong to any of her customers but had been waiting, lost and lonely, for someone to remember it. When that happened, Isara would set aside her current project and weave the fragment into a small square of cloth, storing it carefully in a cedar chest that grew fuller with each passing day. When the full moon came, Caius returned as promised. Isara showed him the chest full of recovered songs, and together they listened to each one, releasing the melodies back into the world. Some went into the wind to find new listeners. Others settled into the land itself, becoming part of the place. And a few, the most precious, Caius absorbed back into himself, rebuilding his collection one fragment at a time. "You found more in a month than I did in a year of searching," he said with wonder. "You have a gift for this, Isara, for listening to what's been silenced, for giving voice to what's been forgotten." "We make a good team," Isara replied, and meant it. Their partnership continued through the turning seasons. Caius would visit with each full moon, bringing stories of his travels and news from the realm between sound and silence. Isara would share the songs she'd recovered, and the music she was learning to make herself simple tunes at first, hummed while she worked, but gradually growing more complex and confident. One evening, as they sat by her fireplace reviewing the month's findings, Caius said something that changed everything again. "I've been thinking," he began carefully, "about why you were born without music, without memories of songs, and I think I might understand now." Isara looked up from the cloth she was examining, curious. "You were meant to be a vessel," Caius continued. "Born empty so you could be filled with other people's music. That's why you can weave memory so perfectly. You don't overlay it with your own songs, your own associations. You can hold their music purely, exactly as they remember it." "That sounds lonely," Isara said softly. "It was," Caius agreed, "until you found your own music. Or rather, until helping me helped you find it. Now you're not empty anymore, but you're not so full that you can't still hold other people's songs. You're balanced. Perfect." He reached out and took her hand, and Isara felt her heart beat faster. "I wonder," Caius said, his ocean-colored eyes holding hers, "if you might consider keeping one more song, one more memory." "Whose?" Isara asked, though she thought she might already know. "Ours," Caius said simply. "This friendship, this partnership, these evenings by your fire, and the songs we've recovered together. I know it's not the same as what I had with Marisol, nothing ever will be, but it's precious to me nonetheless, and I'd like to have something to hold, to remember, just in case." Isara smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest like sunrise. "I'd like that too. But Caius, we don't need cloth to remember this. We're creating the memory together, right now. Every month, every song, every conversation, we're weaving it with our lives, not just with thread and wool." Understanding dawned in Caius's expression, and with it, something that looked remarkably like peace. "You're right. I've been so afraid of losing and forgetting that I didn't realize I was already holding on, already remembering, already here." "Exactly here," Isara confirmed. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire burn down to embers, listening to the song pearl's gentle melody and the distant sound of waves against the cliffs. Outside, the moon hung full and bright, casting silver light across the sea. And in Isara's cottage, two people who had both known loss and loneliness sat together in warmth and companionship, weaving a new story from threads of friendship, music, and hope. It wasn't the ending either of them had expected, but it was good and real and theirs. The best songs, after all, are the ones we create together, note by note, day by day, memory by memory, until they become the music of a life worth living and a love worth keeping, remembered or not.